Good evening, and welcome to this special edition of Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Kyle Betts. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, a special show featuring stories from our sports bureau. But up first, how the pandemic gave the golf industry a boost. During the height of the pandemic, golf courses were a safe space to be active while social distancing, and since then, the game has continued to grow, especially among the younger generation. Cronkite sports reporter Shane Fricke takes a look at how courses are keeping up with the times.
In 2019, the golf industry was in the bunker, but when the pandemic hit in early March, golf was viewed as a way to get out while still social distancing, and the industry had a revival, while also providing a good escape for the younger generation.
Many of these young people, were challenged socially during the pandemic, being able to get out and just feel like a normal kid or person again. And so golf courses were kind of like a good outlet for that.
Over the past 3 years, the number of youth golfers has increased by almost 25%. As the younger generation begins to play the sport more, there's more pressure on the courses to modernize, to attract and retain these new golfers.
I think it all goes back to that. You have a younger crowd that is super into games and competition, and so finding ways to gamify golf or the traditional driving range experience is one thing.
Adapting their driving range is something that Dobson Ranch takes great pride in. A driving range is an important aspect of a golf course, and Dobson Ranch has made great strides to make it as effective as possible.
We've got 25 bays now outfitted with monitors. People can play golf, they can play different games. We have kid-friendly ones like Go Fish.
Even though these changes at the golf course are geared for the younger generation, that doesn't mean there isn't a positive impact on the golfers who have been playing for a long time.
And it's almost like a fountain of youth. You put on the music, you start doing games, you do contests. We've got cornhole out here, and it's just kind of bringing a breath of fresh air to them.
Longbow Golf Course in Mesa is another course that has made changes in recent years to attract new golfers and speed up the game. They introduced golf boards, an alternative to the traditional golf cart.
A single rider golf cart called a golf board. And that's like a skateboard that you stand up on. It's motorized, and you put your golf bag in front and you ride that around the golf course, and that's popular with young people.
These longboards aren't just popular with the younger generation. Players of all ages enjoy riding on these boards because of a new aspect they bring to the game.
They're fast, they're exciting, they keep you focused on the game, and it's a bit of an adrenaline rush. So actually it makes golf, which is wonderful already, so much more exciting.
Dobson Ranch also made some changes to their golf carts to keep the energy high while playing. They added Bluetooth speakers to all of their carts so players can enjoy music while golfing. These speakers go in hand with the music playing all throughout the clubhouse and driving range area.
Even when you come out here, to have music pumping, going through, everybody having a good time, smiling, it keeps the energy up, and at the same time, it helps everybody kind of relax.
The relaxing vibes and stimulating music can be a contagious feeling. ASU sophomore Noah Fiedler now prefers this driving range because of the atmosphere.
I just like how kind of laid back around the range is. I don't have to show up in perfect golf attire every time. I can just come out, hit some balls, and listen to some music while I'm doing it.
The lead junior instructor at Dobson Ranch, Cheyenne Stewart, thinks all these changes are leading golf in the right direction and has some advice for courses that haven't yet adapted.
Add the music, add the different lights, have special events going on at night, have different organizations that brings more ladies out, having a junior program there.
Golf has been long viewed as one of the most traditional sports that rarely experiences changes. But as the whole world adapts to new technology, so does the sport of golf. Courses all around the world must find ways to modernize the sport without ruining the game itself. In Mesa, Shane Fricke, Cronkite News.
Now to a profile of former ASU track star Mason Ford, who has taken the skills he learned in athletics to the business world. Cronkite sports reporter Connor Cox has more on the Valley native, who is now running laps in the gaming industry.
Taking a leap of faith is something Mason Ford has done since high school. Starting high jump his senior year, he caught on quickly, placing 5th in the state championships after only a handful of months of training. The future was promising for Ford. After transferring to ASU, he walked onto the track team, earned a scholarship, became all Pac-12, obtained a master's degree, and earned the coveted Bill Kajikawa Award for ASU's most outstanding senior male student athlete.
Mason's just a really good person. He's a really good athlete, too. and had the opportunity to work with him somewhat there. And then later, after college, he looked at trying to get involved in being a decathlete.
But Ford was getting burnt out and no longer had the financial resources to continue his track career. So he hung up his spikes and started pursuing other passions.
Some of my passions include music, comedy, community. That is kind of the culmination of how Cruel Tunes came about.
Ford created a card game intertwined with Spotify, combining all three of his key passions into an unforgettable game night. The game itself, called Cruel Tunes, is simple to pick up and understand. However, inventing and launching a card game is far from easy.
Yeah, these are some of the original prototypes.
After several prototypes and lots of trial and error, Ford started creating an online presence and the orders started rolling in. One of the unique things about this game is that it can even be played via Zoom or FaceTime.
So it'd basically just be, I'm listening to Summertime Sadness
because I plan on punching through a wall. I DJ on the weekends.
Cruel Tunes is a game that combined multiple passions that Ford considers a part of his identity. And although he is no longer competing on the track, he still finds a way to keep that part of himself close.
I coach high school track too. That's another thing that's a big part of who I am, what I love to do, being a part of the track community in a different capacity now.
Ford's now coaching at Perry High School, but Cruel Tunes just got put onto Amazon, and they will be shipping his game out of facilities much like this one behind me, showing all athletes that life is not over when the athletic career is. In Phoenix, Connor Cox, Cronkite News.
From track and field to football now, where we chronicle a coach's journey from the Navajo Nation to the professional ranks. Cronkite News reporter Michael Bosky has a story of the Rattlers strength and conditioning coach from Tuba City.
Arizona Rattlers strength and conditioning coach Maurice Brown's journey to professional sports has not been easy. While attending Tuba City High School, Coach Brown suffered a devastating knee injury during a basketball game that almost ended his sports career.
And it took one person, which was my doctor at the time, who took it upon himself to coach me and get me mentally right and to rehab me. But he also did the rehab to get me back into playing again. So, that guidance right there led me into my career.
Once he recovered from his injury, Coach Mo became interested in the recovery aspect of sports.
To see him explore other opportunities outside of that and kind of get into the sports medicine field and eventually get into the whole strength and conditioning field, it really helped him understand there's more avenues to pursue, my dreams of being in, professional sports, collegiate sports, and that really helped him.
Coach Mo is a member of the Navajo Nation and grew up in a small town of 8,000 people in Tuba City, Arizona. Sports are a huge part of the Indian reservation, but with the absence of sports doctors on the reservation, it is difficult for athletes on the reservation to get treatment for injuries.
Coming from the Indian reservation, there is really no sports med team, there's really no strength coaches. I mean, everyone loves sports. The reservation's so invested into their youth and high school sports that there's not a lot of resources out there that allow these athletes to really reach their full potentials.
Coach Brown is still a prominent figure in the Navajo community and gives back to the community that taught him values he lives by to this day. Coach Mo believes that the mindset instilled in him by the Navajo Nation helped him become successful in his field.
My purpose in life is to coach people and help people get from point A to point B. And I wouldn't really have discovered that if I didn't have failures, didn't have adversity, didn't have certain challenges, making me become more self-aware of who I am as an individual.
From working as an intern to working as an assistant with the D-back sports medicine team, Coach Brown is making a name for himself in the sports recovery industry. He is also one of the very few Native American strength coaches in collegiate and professional sports.
And one of the biggest things I remember him saying is, I want to be the first, Native American strength and conditioning coach in a professional sports team. And, he's definitely making him a name for himself, and he's doing well, and he's utilizing his education, his training, his experience.
Now as head strength and conditioning coach of the Arizona Rattlers, Coach Brown looks to build a lasting legacy in Arizona. In Phoenix, Michael Bosky, Cronkite Sports.
To college football now, the Sun Devil football team at ASU has a melting pot of ethnicities and cultural backgrounds. But one group of athletes are united through a storied history centered around faith, family, and football. Cronkite Sports reporter Colt Almodovar explains the pipeline that has cultivated Polynesian pride at Arizona State.
ASU running backs coach Sean Aguano feels right at home on the football field. The former coach at Chandler High School was born and raised on the Hawaiian island of Kauai, a place where football is at the core of the community. At Arizona State, Aguano is at the core of the Polynesian pipeline, bringing players to the ohana, or family, in Tempe.
You can share your experience and especially the way that you will take care of their family, and that's huge. I think back home in Hawaii, and we all talk about the ohana part of it and the family part of it. I think it's very important from a coach that's taking kids from the islands to make sure that they take care of them and treat them like their own family.
This community of Polynesian athletes on the Sun Devil football team is united by a shared bond that is rooted in cultural heritage, a connection that has formed a brotherhood.
All the Polynesian kids, no matter what you are, if you're Tongan, Samoan, Hawaiian, it doesn't matter, they all connect on the same level, and it brings you together because you're Polynesian.
It just makes everything so much better, you know, so much easier. You feel at home. It kind of takes your mind off of when days get hard, you know, when sometimes you don't want to do nothing, come in here and just seeing your brothers and, you know, them being able to take some of that weight and making you feel comfortable.
Along with Aguano, offensive line graduate assistant Jack Tufono, who has both Hawaiian and Samoan heritage, helps mentor players, making sure they can succeed both on and off the field.
It's good having them there with us, you know, to help guide us along the way. Cool too, because they got like the little poly humor, so, you know, sometimes we be laughing on the side, you know, the other teammates don't really know what we're laughing about, but it's that little poly, humor.
Football and Polynesian culture have been intertwined since the early to mid 1900s. In 1945, Al Lolotai made history, becoming the first Samoan to play in the NFL. Since then, Polynesian athletes have won Super Bowls, national championships, and even Heisman trophies by playing the game that directly aligns with their cultural values.
Football emulates Polynesian culture, you know, everything that we do, you know, and that's why I think there's so many Polys that love football, is because, you know, from a young age, you know, it teaches you about respect, you know, respecting your elders, which, you know, you can reflect that to the coaches. It teaches you toughness, you know, which is what you need in this game.
Faith is an integral part of Polynesian culture. As part of his faith in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, offensive lineman Sione Veikoso decided to sacrifice his first 2 years after high school to serve his church mission in Brazil and Oregon. For defensive tackle Jermaine Lole, his football journey didn't even start until high school, as his upbringing was centered around the activities of the Christian church.
My grandpa was a pastor, and when he passed away, my pops was a pastor too, so I always grew up close to the church, close to, you know, everything that had to do with church. It was either church or school, really, when I was growing up.
Since the early days of legendary Sun Devil coach Frank Cush recruiting Polynesian athletes, ASU has cultivated a long history of poly talent. Names like Junior Ayu, David Dixon, and Dan Saleaumua have been a part of Tempe's Polynesian pipeline that has thrived for decades, a legacy that the next generation continues to foster.
A lot of people don't really know about the poly culture in Arizona, but I say it's very healthy, very well here. A lot of polys, a lot of love, and, you know, we just doing our best to represent the culture.
With spring ball wrapped up, Aguano and Tufono will make their trip back to the islands this summer, looking to welcome future Polynesian players to the Sun Devil Ohana. In Tempe, Colt Almodovar, Cronkite Sports Report.
Finally tonight, we take you to Eloy, a town halfway between Tucson and Phoenix off the I-10. To those who live there, the town's identity has been largely shaped through high school sports. I traveled to Eloy and discovered how football has changed the town's culture for the better. Eloy, Arizona is a town of about 16,000 residents and is known as one of the top skydiving destinations in all of Arizona. What some Arizonans might not know is that it has produced among the best football talent in the state.
Since we had so many sports figures here that some of the other kids, they wanted to emulate.
Rufino Sauceda was a part of that talent that played on the school's first state championship team, which went undefeated back in 1965, setting the precedent for football in Eloy. Eloy's tough-minded reputation didn't start on the gridiron, though. Known as Cotton City, Eloy families would spend months picking cotton and farming onions, potatoes, and other crops in order to make a living.
Those guys never spent 5 minutes in the weight room, but they pitched watermelons and they worked in the fields. And even in my generation, there wasn't anybody that was an athlete who went to school at Santa Cruz who hadn't worked in the fields.
Beyond agriculture, Eloy was still a tough place to grow up. There was no organized law until 1950, and shootouts were a common occurrence on Main Street.
It was a difficult place to live, as well Coolidge was to the smaller towns. So you'd have to learn very quickly how to protect yourself.
The work ethic Santa Cruz football players learned in the farming fields translated to the football fields. The Dust Devils followed up their 1965 championship with another the next season, and 3 years later in 1969. Part of that success was shared by the community and how it rallied behind the football team.
The stands were always
packed,
always full, and they also traveled. You kind of want to play harder for them because they traveled for so far.
What stands out about the talent of Eloy is that it has produced 5 NFL players, the most per city capita in Arizona. Those names include Art and Benny Malone, Mossy and Eddie Cade, and Levi Jones.
We have world-class athletes that came from Eloy.
50 years ago, Main Street here in Eloy was bustling with entertainment. Now it's just a shell of what it once was. The Malone brothers, Cade brothers, and Levi Jones all took Main Street to go to high school just down the road at Santa Cruz Valley. Jones, who was selected 10th overall by the Cincinnati Bengals in the 2002 NFL Draft, said his experience growing up playing football in Eloy was instrumental in his development.
It was all built off of hard work. The whole town was built off of hard work. It's just definitely a good feeling to be able to hoist Eloy up on our back and stand tall and defend it at all times.
The Dust Devils now turn to building off of their 2020 state championship in 2022 with a new head coach, as Santa Cruz football alumni Thomas Cortez is at the helm.
The same thing is now that I'm coaching, and just make sure that my players understand that same philosophy and that, represent the school well.
He hopes to continue Eloy's winning tradition and plans to instill core football values that made the program special when it all started 57 years ago. Santa Cruz hopes to continue its winning tradition as the Dust Devils begin their season this month, seeking their 9th state championship. That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thanks for joining us. Break It Down is next. For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.